All right, we are back today with Alex Yarbo. Alex is in my mentorship program, and he specializes in and focuses on short-term rentals, but more specifically, a unique strategy in short-term rentals, build to rent short-term rentals ground up, as well as covered land plays, which is where maybe you've got a house on some property that's residual that you can build on, things like that. So, Alex, how's it going?
Thanks for having me, man. Really good.
Yeah, awesome. And also, we're going to tell people about your new short-term rental course that you've put together. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. So, how's that going?
It's going really well. We're actually launching it tomorrow. Been putting the last 6 months into putting it together and make sure it's perfect. But essentially, what I've been saying is I created the course that I wish I had when I started 6 years ago.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, so we'll get into that here in a couple of minutes, and I'll put a link to that in the description of the video so people can go to your website, sign up for it. Are you doing like a pre-registration thing for people?
Yeah, I mean, it's launching tomorrow, so I'm not even doing the pre-registration thing. Just like once it launches tomorrow, it's launching tonight. The people can just sign up through that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll just put this video live when you're ready to go. So, anyway, so yeah, tell us a little bit about where what you're doing, where you've started. More importantly, I think since you and I've started, you've probably 100x the business, right? So,
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, we've taken it to a place that I never even thought it would have gone, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, backing up all the way for people who don't know me. So like I coming out of the military, I had about like my enlistment was coming up about a year, and then I just didn't know what I wanted to do. Decided I didn't want to re-enlist. So I just started reading up on different investing classes, crypto, stock market, real estate. Real estate really caught my eye just because I enjoyed the control over what you could have with real estate with like forced appreciation and everything. So I had originally joined a flipping mentorship, and what I realized was the gentleman that was in charge of that flipping mentorship, most of his long-term wealth was tied into short-term rentals. So I got him on the phone and really picked his brain about the best market, what type of like how to choose a market and the best markets to invest in short-term rentals. And he was the one who actually helped me decide on Asheville, North Carolina, because originally not from where I currently live here. And the day I got out of the Marine Corps, I drove straight here. I had an apartment lined up, but besides that, nothing else besides some money that I had saved up. Got my real estate license, and then I started looking for a short-term rental myself. And what I realized was that anything that was on the market was at that time either way out of my price range or it just wouldn't have done well as a unique short-term rental. It probably would have done well as like a long-term rental, but like something where you can create an experience for the guests. I felt like it was just there was nothing on the market. So my very first real estate project, my very first real estate investment was a new ground up development from raw land into a short-term rental. And then one turned into two turned into four, brought on some investors with your help. And just today alone, like we're developing 24 right now.
yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
But
So, one thing that's interesting about short-term rentals, and here's a little nugget to kind of throw out there. So, as you know, and many people may or may not know, I started in 1997 as a real estate developer doing short-term rentals back before, being Airbnb and
right.
VRBO was a thing. I can't remember when VRBO started, but they were first building multi-million dollar, resort destination beach houses. And what's pretty interesting about the business back then versus now is it wasn't as popular as it is now. Like, short-term rentals are just like a meme now. Everybody wants to get into them
Right.
and they've become a different thing. But back then it was really interesting because I was building ground up exclusively on short-term rentals. I mean, some we were buying and putting pools in and ground floors, like the houses were all built on pilings at the beach. So the ground floor was generally open. So we'd go in and close that in, create like a rec room, another bedroom, then we put a pool in, and that would increase the rental income generally by $30,000 to $50,000 a year on a house and really cover a lot of the costs. Some houses had added about 100 grand to the income if it was oceanfront. But anyways, long story short, when I was building them new to sell, because I built to sell, I didn't want to keep
Right.
anything. You had to have a year's worth of income behind the property for people to want to buy them. They wanted to see that this house was proven, that it would generate the income. So they were always worth more after a year once you had a good year's full of income. But most people wouldn't buy a brand new, short-term rental unit from me or anybody else that was building them until they had at least 1 year, full season under them,
Yeah.
which was really interesting, you know.
Yeah. And now it's completely different. I feel like when I'm pushing out the course now is sort of the perfect timing because there are a lot of lenders out there that's how it used to be as well. It's like like maybe 5 or 6 years ago, they wouldn't even let you. There would no lender would offer any financing if it didn't have at least a year or two, even if it was a built property. And now it's like you have a lot of different lenders, even in the commercial space, that are maybe coming from like RV parks or like micro resort communities that are saying, "Hey, we'll finance these type of projects with no income." Just like a track record, essentially, is what they look for.
Yeah, yeah, they do projected income, and see, we weren't able to use that. We had to
Right.
finance them based on our balance sheet, and I was paying 9.75% interest on my construction loans back then.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
No,
I
it's
mean, I
funny.
had
That's why like
$100,000 a month going out in interest payments at one point.
people freaking out about interest rates now. And one of my investors was like, "Man, my first mortgage I ever got in the '80s was at 14%." I was like, "Okay, that makes me feel a little better."
Yeah, yeah, 5, 6% was good back, not too long ago. Yeah, it's
Right,
just people have been really spoiled here the last few years, and especially
right,
people that have just gotten into the industry with the markets, everything. People didn't go through 2008 and 9. They've got a very skewed view of
right.
how things
So,
can go. But
right.
the
Clear
other thing
skies
was
and
too that's really changed now is that it used to be almost exclusively like resort kind of areas where you did short-term rentals.
right.
Now you can put one almost anywhere, and people just
Anywhere.
want to
I
go
was just thinking about
explore
that this morning.
different
Yep.
geographies and just kind of look at and do different things. But one thing you might want to think about, anybody watching, if you're going to do this, is you might want to start looking at major sporting events. Like I saw a post the other day of a guy that's got a property out in Arizona where the Super Bowl is going to be this year, and he booked $250,000 on a high-end luxury rental property for the 2 weeks of the Super Bowl, two different properties.
Yeah.
So if you target areas where maybe the Olympics are coming internationally, as well as in
Yeah.
this country, where major sporting events are going to be, even some minor sporting events like travel leagues for baseball or soccer or lacrosse or whatever, those will do very well too. So different
Another
business model now than it was back when I first got started.
And it's interesting too because a lot of markets are being made because of short-term rentals. I was just talking to someone out of New York, and he was telling me like back in the '80s, '90s, early 2000s, like the Catskills of upstate New York was nothing, and now it's like a prime short-term rental area. And what I tell, and I talk about this in the course, but what I tell students is that you might not think your market is unique, and it might not, maybe your look grass is greener on the other side. But what I always say is try to think of a place where people in your market like to take a weekend or maybe an extended weekend vacation. And that might be the market. It might not be the exact market you're currently in, but if it's 30 minutes, 45 minutes away, an hour away, those markets, those little pockets exist everywhere in the country and internationally as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's really, really interesting. And, from a construction standpoint, as we know, the housing inventory is pretty limited in a lot of areas. That's starting to correct a little bit in some areas,
Right.
but it's still pretty tight in most areas. And with the interest rates rising and the real estate market shifting, that's going to create an opportunity in new construction. So when I started in the business, that was the big issue, was resale properties were more expensive, just like you found. So it was cheaper to buy land and build new than it was to buy existing. So that's why building, generally that's when it makes more sense to build, is when you can build cheaper than you can buy, or when there's no inventory. So we're going to see land prices start to come down, because land is always the slowest moving segment of the market in most areas when housing is correcting. You're also going to see construction costs. We're already seeing construction costs come down because the big national builders are pulling back. They're not building, so subcontract labor is going to be more available. Materials are coming down, more accessible, things like that. So it's going to get easier, cheaper, and faster to build now than it has been the last couple of years, especially with the pandemic. There's going to be more land available at the right price, so it's a good opportunity now to take advantage of new construction, all that. And I think, is your course specific to that, or do what do you cover in general on short-term rentals?
Yeah, I mean, we can do a screen record real quick, but yeah, it's the course covers it covers so the whole thesis on it is first short-term rentals is like building unique short-term rentals. So that might mean glamping if you're just starting. That might mean it might not just be permanent foundation stick built, but it talks about everything from land analysis, what type of property you should building, what to think about, what's specific to your market. And then it goes into play like how to build your team out. I'm just looking at it right now. And then also we talk about how to go big and stuff. So if you want to do these micro resort communities like how I'm doing, I started to talk about that as well, and like briefly touch on capital raising and stuff as well.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead and share your screen so we can just take
Yep.
a look at it while people are here? And I'm a big proponent of education, as you know, and so I'm excited that you've done this, and I know this is really going to help people because you've just learned a ton over the last few years that you've been doing this, and I know you're tapped into a lot of big short-term rental groups and things like that, and You're writing articles on Bigger Pockets. If y'all haven't seen that, go check out Alex on Bigger Pockets. He's got a blog there that he runs on short-term rentals, has some really great advice. But yeah, why don't you take us through this real quick?
Yeah, so I put this together because, like you just said, a lot of people from Bigger Pockets were especially reaching out to me, asking me, "Hey, do you have 30 minutes of your time? Do you have an hour of your time?" And it just got to a point where I just couldn't take all those calls. So I'm like, "Hey, let me especially a lot of my friends have been asking as well." So I was like, "Hey, let me put together a course because I feel like there's a market for this, especially with all the things we just talked about." But yeah, so we start off. This is the course. There's we're going to talk about it too, but there's also a support group coaching piece to it as well that once a month, or I mean, there's an email that you can reach out to with support, but once a month, if you have any specific questions, because development, there's so many moving parts, that you can reach out to me through a private Facebook group where we go live for a couple hours of me just answering questions once a month. But you have the fundamentals. There's over 120 videos talking about the different types of properties you can build. And we go into like financing, we go into like market and property research. We go into building out your team, architects, engineers, general contractors. Honestly, going really in depth. A lot of the team stuff can be covered probably with your real estate agent and GC, but we dive deep into talking about how to find the people, the right questions to ask as well. Different financing structures that currently exist in the short-term rental space, and how to take advantage of, if you already own your own land, if you already own property, how to develop more on that property if there's room for it. Partnerships and structures, intro to capital building, how I raise capital, going big, talking about if you actually do want to go big compared to maybe you're just comfortable having 3, 4, 5 properties that throw off 20 to 40,000 in cash flow a year. Maybe that's all you want to do. So we talk about if you actually want to do the bigger communities, and then if you do want to do the bigger communities, just some of the rules and some of the things that sort of play into doing some of the bigger stuff, because it is different than building maybe 1 or 2 properties. And then there's also a bonus management course that I put together. So how to rank
Managing
on
the
Airbnb.
properties.
What was that?
Managing the properties.
Yeah, so if you want to take on the management yourself, there's a bonus management section that I include in the course as well that talks about how to list your property and different things different things that go into different tools. And again, there's same thing with the development piece, just the different team that you need to get put together if you want to manage them yourself. And the course also talks about how to find a manager and what if you don't want to do it yourself. But everything's in here. The resources you have, messaging templates, review templates, inventory templates. You have templates in the development side of it as well. So like a furnishing checklist I just furnished a 5-bedroom cabin with everything, with links that you need, with what to furnish a property with. JV agreements, that's like a boilerplate. There's a disclaimer there that like obviously you have to seek your own legal support, but there's templates in there on what to say and everything. And then the biggest thing that I put together for this was just so I'm gonna find it here real quick, was is a workbook.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
I put together a 60 between the 2 courses is 66 pages, but essentially fill in the blank while you're going through the courses workbook. Which is, I essentially tried to create every single support type of thing that you would need to do this yourself. Because like, better than anyone, that there are a lot of moving pieces in development. That's why this course is so big. But I tried to cover probably 90 to 95% of everything. And the 5% that's not covered can be covered in the group coaching calls.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And I assume that as you get those questions, you're going to update your course with the things that, yeah. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
awesome.
And I mean, the people who are currently whoever purchased the course will have access to all those updates as well.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the goal with any business, is just, I guess, adapting what's currently working, because things are changing every 6 months, every 3 months, things are changing right now.
Especially in technology, but just that, like I said, the way the business has evolved in and of itself, going from like the business I started in where, it was week to week, you had to check in on a Sunday, check
Right.
out on a Saturday, that kind of thing, to now with short-term rentals, what we're seeing, especially over the last couple of years, is people booking last minute versus well in advance, like a year in advance, down on the beach. And you still have to, if you want that house for the same time next year, you have to book while you're there. But most short-term rentals now, I mean, people are booking last minute, they're booking shorter stays, and they're experimenting more and trying out different locations. Like I said, some of them are like in the middle of nowhere, and people are like, I'm fine. I want to go stay in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, it's funny that so the person that helped me integrate all the technology when it comes to putting this course together, he was like, "Hey man, I just purchased this 48-acre parcel in Canada, like 3 hours away from Toronto." And he's like, "I'm gonna purchase your course because like my brother and I just built like they built two small cabins on this 48-acre parcel." And he's like, "We just listed one of them and like we're like booked out like 70% already the first month." And this was this is in the middle of nowhere. There's no running water. It's just a cabin with like an outhouse. And I was like, I guess there's a need for it if the dude who's helping me put together the technology wants the course. So yeah.
Well, I didn't even really thought about it, but where I was at on the Outer Banks, we had the ocean, we had the sound, like a bay area, and there
Yeah.
were these little
Beautiful area,
marsh
by the way.
islands, and people
Yeah,
were
yeah.
building these little fish shacks on these marsh islands. So it's like that. No, running water or anything, but they had electricity going to them, and you take a boat out to them and just kind of hang out and fish. That would have been neat to kind of do some Airbnbs on some of those. They may be doing it, for all I know right now, but
I know there's an island going up in Hilton Head where you have to take a ferry to the island to get to the short-term rental. It's almost like my wife and I had stayed in the Maldives where like you need a boat to get to the resort. And it's
yeah,
the same thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
the water huts.
Yeah. The water huts. It was
Great
cool.
start
It
to the
was trippy
Maldives.
at night though. People don't know whoever stays in those huts, those things move at night a lot because a lot of wind off the water.
Yeah.
My wife woke up and was like, call the front desk right now because this thing's about to fall in the water. I was like, no, they need to they shift a lot at night.
Yeah, yeah. So do the houses on the beach that I build
Right.
because they're on pilings and they move. Even if you enclose the ground floor, they still move quite a bit with the winds down there. But the ones that aren't enclosed in the bottom, they dance.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. I mean, they'll snap if they don't. So
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. Well, cool, man. Well, I'm looking forward to the launch of the course. And like I said, we're going to post a link to the video so people can go sign up when it's available. And man, it looks fantastic. Lots of information and the resources. I'm sure you have all the new online automation
yep.
technology resources listed as well and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, just like with anything, like the goal of the business is to be able to work on the business, not in it. So, I mean, automation is like my number one thing is, I mean, you know me, like I run a pretty lean team. I have almost nobody on staff. I have GCs that work for me, management, like cleaning companies that work for me. But I talk about that in the course of like, you can build a 8 figure business with running a pretty lean team. I mean, you run a pretty lean team as well. So, yeah,
Yeah, I learned that over the years. I mean, that's kind of the way I always operated. Even when I had bigger teams, it was still, I wasn't working in the business at any given
exactly.
moment. I had people running it. But what's really cool about this too is the numbers. So that's what's really changed too, is that, that was really what was really interesting about what you're doing and some other people that working with some other areas doing short-term rentals is, the income that you can generate, net income on your cost base is very different in my world because beach
Yeah.
properties are expensive. But the stuff that people are doing now in these other areas where you got 2, 3, 400,000 all in, and you're generating over 100,000 a year in income is just nuts.
Yeah, like we built our first A-frame turnkey for about 220,000 with land and furnishings. That one was 830 square foot, and that one netted us about 48,000 in income, and then it grossed 84,000.
Yeah.
Um,
So gross 84, net 40 something after debt service.
After everything, yeah, after
Okay, so
debt
to put
service,
that in
everything.
perspective, where my areas, like the beaches in most areas of the country and the beaches, to get 80,000 to $100,000 a year in annual income, you're going to have to spend 1.2 million to get that. So, I mean, you can buy,
5x, yeah.
yeah, 4 or 5 of what you're doing for that same dollar. And that was the problem with our areas. It's you don't make any money. They
Yeah,
break even.
and
They're annuities. They're great. You get to use them, but they're
yeah.
not cash cows like the stuff that you can do in these other areas now.
Yeah, and it's like the mountain markets, and again, we talk about it in the course, but it's like some of these more rural markets as well, where you have a unique property in the mountains or somewhere in the woods, is that they're a little bit less seasonal, where people like to stay in them in the winter, where the property becomes the attraction itself in the winter during the down season, and then the city and the market itself becomes the attraction during the high season, the summer or the leaf season.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, Alex, thanks for taking a few minutes out and sharing the course with us. And man, I know it's going to help a lot of people.
Appreciate it, brother.
Talk to you soon.